Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntra is here. I am so happy to welcome face-to-face for the first time on Word Balloon. He's been a former audio podcast guest, but welcoming the great Elliot S. Maggin. I emphasize the S with the exclamation point that's implied. Good to see Al.
Hi. Good to see you.
Hey, I am thrilled because we're going to talk we'll probably go through the greatest hits a little bit as far as some of your fantastic comics over the years, but I want to make people aware. Last time you were on, you were releasing your two Superman novels, Last Son of Krypton and Miracle Monday, under your own imprint, which are available at Amazon.
Amazon, Libris, BN.com, Barnes & Noble.
Excellent.
I don't know where else you can find it. Wherever they sell books online.
But also... And I hope that you'll be selling your narration. But you started a podcast last year where you were reading Last Son of Krypton, which is fantastic.
I did Last Son of Krypton. I did Miracle Monday too.
Okay, I was on the. I did a search, and all I could find was the Last Son of Krypton stuff on Spreaker.
Really?
Where is it? Because and tell first of all, tell everybody the title of your podcast.
Elliot makes stuff up.
Excellent.
I can't get it on Echo, Alexa, but it's on Spotify and Libsyn.com.
Sure. Is that where is that who's hosting your
Libsyn
podcast?
Is hosting it.
Excellent.
Yeah, and it should all be there. I haven't checked in the last few weeks, but
okay, because I just did a quick search, and what came up was the Spreaker platform. And it's funny because my show is they sponsor me actually, Word Balloon and everything. So I was like, oh my God, El's on Spreaker. That's fantastic. So I was excited about that, and I'm glad that you did both books. So you're narrating. You obviously refer to Facebook posts that you make as well. Tell everybody else what you're doing on the podcast.
Well, what I'm working on now is a novel I wrote a couple of years ago called Not My Closet, which is, it doesn't involve people flying under their own power. It's the first novel I've written that's about real, actual humans. But it's pretty long, actually, here.
Excellent. Yeah, please.
Do I have a copy?
I'm gonna let you go solo there and show people the cover if you got
there we go. Handy. There it is. I think it's reversed, though. Oh, there it is. It's good. I can see it.
No, it looks good.
And it's about real people who are grown up, and I call it a chick flick for boys.
So that's cool. Excellent, man. This is great, and I know people are going to have questions, and I'll throw a few people that are just happy to see you talking and everything. Let's see here. my mouse. Of course, my mouse is being stubborn. Come on, get over there. Oh, let's see. Here's Alex Chung. Oh boy, this is going to be a fun interview. Well, I certainly hope
Hey,
so.
Alex.
Very nice. And Kale Wass says, heck yeah. And Miracle Monday and Last Son of Krypton are classics. They are indeed.
Well, they sold okay. That's good.
And Stephen Commander says hello.
Hi.
Very nice. And you know, El, you've said it before on the podcast, but maybe for the viewers watching, you haven't told the story of the first two books, especially Last Son of Krypton, which initially was supposed to be a tie-in for the Richard Donner film.
Well,
and then
they were supposed to. They were planning on publishing a tie-in with the film, and I had written a film treatment. When I heard they were, well, not even when I heard, it was like 1973. I wrote Carmine a memo saying it's time for a Superman movie. Let's do this one. Wow. And I wrote up a 15, 20-page treatment. And next thing I know, well, first Alfred Bester came up to the office. Then Mario Puzo showed up in the library with Nelson Bridwell. And I was just thrilled to meet both of them. I had hung out with Alfie on the phone a bit, but I had never met Puzo, and he's from the same town I was from, on Long Island. His son was a friend of my brother's.
Oh wow!
Yeah, but I never met him. So I was delighted. I was like jumping out of my skin just to hang out with Puzo, even though it meant I didn't get to write the movie. I told him Carrie and I hung out with him for 2 days smoking cigars.
Carrie Bates.
Yeah, in a conference room.
Okay. Did he was that to help him get up to speed? Obviously?
Yeah, we spent 2 days explaining how things work. He really wasn't that familiar with the character.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Plus, he was writing short stories for men's magazines that were published by Marvel essentially as well. So it's kind of weird that he was, around the Marvel offices, but wasn't really hip to the whole Superman mythos and everything. I
don't know that he ever hung out at the Marvel offices. I think he just kind of he was pretty reclusive. He didn't hang out much. He didn't do interviews. He always said he was too fat. He was perfectly rational looking human, but it gave us a chance to talk to a guy like that. Ask the stupid questions that reporters always ask that you never hear the answers to because he didn't do interviews. So, I asked him how his life changed when he did The Godfather. This is like his third or fourth book, but it was his breakout.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I was 47 years old when I wrote the thing. I was pretty much set in my ways. So all it changed was he got to read hardcover books instead of paperbacks. That's what it changed.
And maybe smoke better cigars, I would hope.
Yeah. Oh, he smoked great cigars. Do you
remember the brand? I was a cigar guy in the 90s.
Yeah.
We all hit the fad.
He had Cubans. He had Havanas.
Wow.
What was it? Cohibas, I think they were.
Really? Cohibas? Amazing. That's fantastic, man. The Babe Ruth of Cuban cigars. That's wonderful.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I like Romeo and Julieta better.
I respect that. I understand.
Cohibas were great.
I can appreciate that. Oh man, absolutely. I enjoyed a good Upton. I enjoyed a good. I like the milder ones. I like Macanudo. I was an easy cigar guy. That was fine for me.
Yeah, I don't do that anymore.
I understand. Me neither, man. It was a filthy habit, and I know I burned a hole.
My doctor made me quit. Yeah.
One of my suits, I burned a hole in the pants and stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's enough. And also my your clothes stank. Yeah, it was a bad habit. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and
so that's hilarious.
If you were going out with somebody, you had to take a shower. I mean, it was just taking a shower after about 10 in the morning is traumatic for me.
And before we get into it, because while we're still in this period, like you said, so Alfred Bester had also written a treatment for a Superman movie?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tell us about yours before we talk about, and also for people who don't know, the great Alfred Bester, one of the great sci-fi writers, and of course, the man who came up with the Green Lantern motto, the Oath.
Green Lantern's Oath, yeah. His whole career was based on a series of doggerel verses, I think. He started The Star's My Destination with Gully Foyle is my name and terror is my nation. Deep space is my dwelling place. and Death's My Destination. That was
awesome.
the opening of The Star's My Destination, and I actually got an idea from that for Last Son of Krypton. He started with that verse, and he ended with the same verse, except he changed the last line. So I did the same thing on Last Son. He changed Death's My Destination to The Star's My Destination, which was pretty cool.
God, yes, absolutely, man. How different was your movie treatment from what ended up in your novels?
You know, I don't remember.
Okay, forgive me, man, because I know this is 50 years ago or whatever. So.
Yeah,
yeesh.
It really is. I mean, it's
wow.
Geez, 50 years ago. Yeah.
That's all right, Al. We'll all get there, man. I mean, I'm in my mid-50s. It's totally cool. It's all relative.
Oh,
man.
I remember my mid-50s. That was a distant memory.
Well, again, so Puzo gets the movie gig and everything. So what happened as far as you writing the books?
I kind of took my treatment and went upstairs to Warner Books, which is 2 floors above us on Fifth Avenue, in what's now the Kushner building, I guess. It used to be the Tishman building. Now it's this white elephant sitting across the street from Museum of Modern Art.
Wow.
So I went up to the 6th floor, and I found the senior editor. Her name was Kathy Malley, and I said, "Can we do this?" And she said, "Let me read it." And she gave me a $2,000 advance on a novel.
Pretty good in the early 70s, man.
It was pretty good in the early 70s, but it wasn't
like life-changing. I can appreciate.
Yeah, it wasn't life-changing. I mean, it was life-changing in the sense that I didn't have any damn time to write comics for the next 6 months, so I had to live on nothing pretty much. But it did well. It did well. It was a bestseller.
Oh, hey, look who's
Howard.
Howard's watching us. That's fantastic,
How are
man.
you? Good to see you,
man. Dude, I'm telling you, Howard was on a couple months ago talking to me, so I appreciate it. Seriously, man, it's great. I really appreciate when you guys come on, because I can tell you, Al, when I saw that paperback, I mean, I was already a fan, reading Superman Monthly and Justice League and Green Arrow, and we've already got questions about these as well. But man, when I saw that paperback, I was so excited, and I want to say 13 when it came out. Again, not to age us, but it was great because it really was and is this adult story, and not in a dirty way, but just like it was a book made for everyone to read, and it was great because it's still retained for people who haven't read it. If you love your classic Superman continuity, stuff happens in Smallville. Chief Parker is there. Mod Pa Kent and the General Store, and and of course a special guest appearance by Albert Einstein, which is amazing.
Yeah, I like that General Store. I was upset that they got rid of the General Store.
Yeah, and just that great relationship that is throughout the book of Superman and Lex Luthor that dates back to when they were kids, and that's part of the great tragedy, if we put it in lofty terms, of Superman and Lex's relationship is Lex knows how to push Clark's buttons, and I mean he didn't know Clark, but I mean they were friends, and it's one of Superman's great regrets that this one's good friend is now his worst enemy.
And I think Lex knows that. I think that's where he gets the source of the buttons. I think that's what he plays on to get Superman's goat when he's not in a position to kill him, which he wants to do all the time. But I'm convinced they get to be friends again. But I don't get to say much about that anymore.
You wrote the novelization of Kingdom Come, and you certainly added a lot more to the novel than was there. And I know you're friends with Mark Waid, the original scripter in that. I love that scene in the graphic novel, and you'll forgive me because I don't have I did buy and have your novelization, but I love that scene in Planet Krypton, kind of the Planet Hollywood restaurant at the end that Mark had. And, they're just all talking, Diana and Bruce and Clark, all in civilian clothes. And Bruce makes a comment. Clark's like, well, what's happening with Lex? And he said, I caught him trying to go down to the Batcave and hack into the computer. And he says hello. And there's this great kind of eager moment of Clark going, really? And Bruce going, no.
Not really.
And I love that because it is, again, it's that hope on Superman's when, oh man, maybe there's a chance. And Batman going, no, dummy. No, he still hates you.
Not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to happen, but
that's, again,
only in my universe.
Good stuff, man. Seriously. I love it. Oh, and people already have questions, and I'll dive right in. Magic K, will you have any plans for writing Captain Marvel in the future since the comic series was canceled recently? Oh,
I didn't know the comic series was canceled recently.
I didn't either. Did you have a chance to see the movie?
I did. I liked it.
What did you think? Did you? Cool.
I think they should have called him Captain Marvel, for heaven's sakes. That's his name.
I know.
But they this is anticipating conflict before it happens. Like, oh, I don't want to get in a fight with you. I'll go sit here in this corner. Come on.
Well, unfortunately, yeah, I know. And you're right about that. And I completely agree. And I whatever. What are you going to do? I mean, Marvel did pick up that trademark, and I had nothing against Marvel or Carol Danvers, both fine characters and everything. Yeah. But yeah, it's a shame that Captain Marvel doesn't have his name anymore.
And I keep telling people that Jim created Thanos in my living room.
Jim Starlin, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
When he was doing Captain Marvel. Well, yeah, because artists can hang out together. So he was hanging out with Milgram, who was my roommate, and he created Thanos in the living room, which it gives me as much of a claim on Thanos as Bob Kane has on Batman. We're there. I was in the next room.
That's outstanding. Here, movie critic Dave Fowley. What did you think when you first saw Christopher Reeve in costume and then in action? It's hard too.
I went out to a bar and had a glass of milk. I've never done that before. I was with my friend Pam, and she was just it was like she was taking my pulse through the whole thing. It was weird. Yeah, I was thrilled. I just thought it looked so good. It didn't matter. Oh, this is wrong and that's wrong and this thing over here that's a little different, but no, it didn't matter. He was great.
That's cool. Yeah, man. No, I agree with you. And just that great moment in Lois's apartment when she's getting ready and he's Clark and he takes the glasses off and he straightens up. And it's so great, that physicality that he brought to the character to show the difference.
Good. He was so good.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Jeez. Here's an interesting question from Ed. Any possibility of adapting your novels to graphic novels or animation? That would be great.
I'd like to see Miracle Monday as a feature film, and I don't think I'm going to do anything other than that. I mean, I keep telling people that, and nobody bites. I don't care.
Well, hey, man.
I think Miracle Monday is a story that redeems the character. He reaffirms his belief in the sanctity of life, and he explains how that happens, and that's already there. And it doesn't matter how they screwed it up. But Snyder thinks, he wanted to be the kid in the garage who spilled the paint can on the floor. So screwed that up pretty well.
They're sweeping away the Snyder, although the Snyder cut is coming. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
To see. I don't deny that. I am certainly intrigued with the idea that his regular cut will be seen, and that's intriguing. And also that they're willing to put several million into finishing the movie. I remember when the DVD for the Superman 2 Donner cut came out, and I was thrilled to see that. And man, I'll tell you, it was I liked what we got on the screen. When Richard Lester took over the movie. But yeah, it was kind of great to see the scenes that we didn't see before, and they, I think, were better than what we got really the first time around.
And that's what's commercially available now. That's what's out there. If you get the
Superman 2,
you've got the same microphone I've got. Look at that. You've got a.
Hey, I'm telling you, Mel. There you go, man.
Lovely. Where is it?
There you go. A Yeti microphone. That's fantastic.
Yeti Blue.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, indeed. So
cool,
we shop at the same stores. That's fantastic.
We're together. We're guys.
So what was it like meeting? Oh, here, yes, Bill, absolutely. One of your great stories that you and Carrie wrote. What was it like meeting the Justice League and the Justice Society in their crossover? Explain for.
It was such a silly story.
It was a fantastic story.
Carrie and I it seems we're the only people who don't like that story.
Really?
Yeah, everybody loves it. Everybody remembers it. Everybody refers back to it. I got fan mail from women. And there I was, sitting in there being drawn by Dick Dillon. I mean, Dick was a good guy, but he was not complimentary.
I didn't think it was an unflattering like this.
That show.
Say it again?
I got babes from that show.
Attaboy. Yeah, man. You were the hero, and Carrie was the villain.
I was the hero, yeah. I mean, Carrie got to wear the costume.
This is true.
He won the coin flip.
Again, as a kid, Earth Prime and all those alternate Earths, and especially Earth Prime, it's like, wait a minute, that's where we live. We live on Earth Prime. Holy shit.
That's the way to explain it. Yeah.
And Julie Schwartz had the cosmic treadmill in his office closet.
And I'm telling you, about 3 or 4 months later, Nelson Bridwell comes up to me and says, and I never knew what to take seriously with Nelson. Did you ever meet Nelson?
Oh, God, no.
Wonderful, brilliant guy. Oh, geez. I mean, he used to refer to animals and plants by their Latin names, like in conversation. It was ridiculous. He comes over to me, he says, I got to do some research for this book I'm looking at. Do you think you could tell me where Julie stashes the cosmic treadmill? And you never knew because he was just so deadpan. I still don't know.
Honestly, man, it was so much fun. I love that scene. And Elle, I'm telling you, I haven't read it in decades, but like you and Green Arrow saying the exact same thing at the same moment.
I used to talk funny. I really did. I was like a weird syntax guy.
Are you just embarrassed by it all in terms of like that you put yourselves in the story? I mean,
no,
why don't you like it?
The idea, Carrie, I think I'm going to blame Carrie for the idea. He said, all these guys, they're putting themselves in these stories, doing these little cameo throwaway things. It really annoyed him. So I said, yeah, that's annoying to me too. He says, why don't we go way over the top, make ourselves the hero and the villain, and we'll do that story. And Julie just bit. Julie thought, oh, that's a great idea. We didn't realize that it was a great idea in Julie's thinking because it was going to appeal to people. We thought, nobody would ever do it again. And then comes Grant Morrison, and he's like having long conversations in 4-syllable words with Animal Man.
Yes, indeed.
Bizarre.
Absolutely, man. It was happening in Marvel.
Outdo it, yeah.
It was happening in Marvel, too. I just talked to Paul Jenkins last week, and he created that character, the Sentry, which was kind of a Superman take. And Brian Bendis actually put Paul in a Sentry story, and and Bendis has been in Marvel comics and stuff. So absolutely, man. So and again, unfortunately now we don't have conventions going on, and I've run into you at San Diego once or twice back in the day. I mean, very briefly. I wouldn't expect you to remember, but how many of today's writers do you run into, and have you had conversations with in terms of any appreciation or anything?
I see Larry Houston every once in a while. I see Ken Penders quite a lot. Ken did Sonic for 10 years.
Okay.
Just because he's a buddy.
Okay.
I used to tell people I gave him his first work in comics, but it turns out Dick Giordano did. So I don't tell anybody anything. But we hang out and watch Jessica Jones every week.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Again, Brian's a friend, Bendis, that created Jessica and everything. So that's Oh, I'm glad you like that. Yeah, what do you like in terms of the adaptations that have come from to television or film?
Well, I really like them. I mean, it's like a guilty pleasure. I could watch Jessica Jones over and over and over all day.
Are you?
I hope Jeff is still getting royalties on it too.
I was going to ask, are you getting any? Are they using any of your characters in the CW shows? And are they taking care of you at all? Or
well, take care of me.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That whole run where Ollie's mayor of Star City or Starling City, whatever city it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they kind of acknowledge that, although not on screen, but
I'll give the
a
universal
little bit,
symbol. Did
a
they?
buck or two, not
Okay.
maybe half a month's rent.
Okay. Hey, man, that's your private business, and I don't need to know amounts. But honestly, we don't want you snubbed for things that you
No,
created. So
I'm good. I'm good.
okay, all right, good deal.
I created a lot of stuff, but most of it was second line stuff. I kind of made a point of not creating major characters when I was a kid because there was no acknowledgement of it. At some point, I remember Carmine telling Howard, "Hello, Howard," that he was willing to buy concepts. And I said, "Oh, I got lots of concepts," and Carmine was never interested in buying my concepts. I don't know why. I think
that
it was
sucks.
just well, I don't know what it was. I mean, I got along well with Carmine. He was a good guy, despite what you hear.
Hey, man, no, I'm glad to hear that, man, because honestly, and I don't know, I never, Vinnie Coletta's usually the bad guy in a lot of anecdotes.
Vinnie Coletta was so much fun. You have no idea.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, and also like a good story that I had heard was, of course, everyone knocks that, hey, he erased a bunch of, Jack's backgrounds and things like that, Kirby. But that when Marshall Rogers and Steve Englehart were doing the famous Joker laughing fish story, that the upper management kind of wanted to take them off because they were like, I guess Marshall was taking a long time with his art, and Vinny was the guy that went to bat for him and said, no, you got to let them finish the story. It's a good story.
Yeah, Vinny was good that way. He was. There was some point where I had a story that Frank Giacoya had drawn, and Frank was great, but there was a scene where it went from one panel to the next, and you had to cross the line of action to see the interaction between the characters with just a couple of two shots. But he changed the direction of one panel to the next, which is a bad thing to do. And I said, well, no, you shouldn't do that. You got, when you show a tennis game on camera, you keep 4 cameras on one side of the court. You don't have the ball going this way and then going this way again. And I told Julie that. He says, "Oh, I'll get him to redo it." I said, "Okay, that's fine." I mean, it doesn't make a big deal, but then Vinny yelled at me because it gave Frank extra work that he wasn't getting paid for, and he was right.
Okay,
I do that, and I learned not to do that.
I understand.
I learned not to cross the line of action, but I learned not to object to an artist's work once it's done.
So were you in New York, obviously, when this was going on? Were you living in New York? I mean, who were your DC hangout buddies? And as you said, Marvel, obviously, you had Marvel buddies too.
Yeah, I had Marvel buddies. Howard I hung out with a lot, and Marv Wolfman and Len Wein and remember Mark Hannafelt? Used to hang out with him a lot. And Carrie lived around the corner. I had a girlfriend that used to refer to us as a menage a trois.
Nice.
I'm not sure how. Never mind.
God, not to bring up sad memories, but I became in the last 12 years or so friends with Marty Pasco, and it really bummed me out, obviously, in the spring when he left us. And I even convinced him to go to a couple conventions in the last couple of years. We went to Salt Lake City together, and we went to one in Cincinnati as well. And it was great because I always felt he didn't feel up to snuff or whatever compared to some of his peers. And it kind of bummed me out. I'm like, Marty, you're great. I'm like, people love your stuff, man. I'm like, come on, relax. And it was so great because a lot of the younger creators really gave him his due and everything and told him how much they appreciated him and stuff. So it was, I don't know if that was, your experiences with Marty or.
He wasn't real directed at the end. I don't think he was very successful in the course of his career, but
absolutely.
The last few years he wasn't. He just wasn't happy.
Yeah, I sensed that as well, man. And I always felt like I was kind of coaxing him out of his shadow and everything. And God, I'm really glad that friends of mine that are in animation would have lunch with him and hang out with him and just try to pump him up the same way and everything too. So,
Yeah.
And again, we'll get to happier memories. But again, we lost Denny O'Neil, and
Oh,
I don't know what yeah. So, yeah, again, not to bum us out, man, but geez, and just such tough luck from a health standpoint, and his wife passing away and everything. It's
that's probably what did it. I mean, he had known her since high school.
And what a sweet love
they both
story
married different people, got divorced, and came back together, and spent their last 40 years together.
Yeah.
Absurd.
Yeah, that's cool.
They were very close. They were very close.
Larry, his son, put us together in terms of doing a couple really great long conversations and stuff before he passed, and I'm very grateful for that because I really enjoyed getting to know him and having our talks and everything. So
my most vivid memory of Larry was when he was like about 8 or 9, and Denny and Larry and I went out for dinner, and I taught Larry how to make an oboe out of a straw. And you cut it a certain way, and you blow on it. It makes a lot of noise, and then if you cut it in half, it makes an octave. So he got all excited about that. I think he was doing that for years after that. It drove his father crazy.
That's awesome. Eric Johnson, pardon me. Well, I love all your work. I have a soft spot for the Gen X novel and that you worked out. How about that?
You.
That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Cool. I mean, so what else am I going to say?
No, that's awesome. So was Wildstorm Gen X, obviously, or Jim Lee Gen X?
I did it with Scott Liddell.
Okay.
I collaborated on it with Scott, and it was pretty much fun. I liked it.
Oh, now Kale Watt, and I did want to talk about this. My favorite was the early Joker series, absolutely, which to this day, I can't believe he doesn't have a title. Yeah, man, that was a short run, but that was really novel to give a villain his book, and I really enjoyed it too. Tell us about the Joker book.
We could do that now. We could do it now, but at the time, it didn't work because we were constrained by the comics code. And at the end of every story, the Joker had to die or fall off a train or get put in Arkham or something. And, our way around that was just to do it at the end of every story. And the next story, he was magically resurrected. Because the bad guy had to lose. So the bad guy was the protagonist. Okay, bad guy could be the protagonist as long as he loses.
God, and yeah, man.
I love that series. I love that series. I think I did most of them.
Only like 9, I think, were published, something like that. It was a real short run.
No, I think it was over a year, but just barely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, it was honestly, no, I loved it. Did you see the movie?
Oh yeah.
What'd you think of the movie?
Well, it wasn't the same Joker, but
sure.
Phoenix was great.
He was. Oh yeah.
First thing I said when I came out of the movie, this person I was with, she says, so did you like it? I said no. Was it a good movie? I said, yeah. Yeah, Phoenix was incredible. And that's what I said. And now he's got an Oscar, and the movie didn't win anything else, I guess. Which I think is the way it should be.
I think it's interesting too. And again, I think this is generationally because clearly, and in fact, I know Scorsese was initially a producer on the movie. Mm-hmm. And I said it was like if you'd never seen a band play like your favorite song, and then you saw a cover band come and do a remake, and you're like, oh my God, this is incredible. But older people like us are like, okay, there's Taxi Driver, there's King of Comedy.
But it was like yesterday, the movie Yesterday. You hear these songs for the first time, they're incredible songs.
Yes.
Even though this dorky guy is singing them.
Yeah, man. No, and again, and I was really impressed, and right now the filmmaker's name is escaping me. Todd Phillips, maybe? No. I can't remember right now, but I know, God, to go from, he did the Hangover movies, and then to go from that and doing Joker and stuff, it's like, damn, good for him. It's different muscles to do that kind of, crazy movie and stuff.
Yeah, I guess he wanted to show he could.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Let's see. Wayne says, I read Elliot's Kingdom Come novelization to my wife in the hospital with different voices for the characters. Yeah, Wayne's a massive comic fan and collector, great original art collector and stuff.
The audio version of it, they did it with actual actors, not actual actors, fake actors, but different people playing the different characters. And they didn't call. I was in LA and they recorded it in New York, but they did it as a dramatization, like a radio play. Yeah.
Oh no, quite good. I had the cassettes and everything. I thought that was very, very good. Well made, actually. So that and even the Doomsday story they did, and they did the Batman Nightfall story as well. I know that was a good radio, or audio serialization and everything. I thought those were all quite well done. So, were you pleased with your, how you did Kingdom Come and how it turned out?
With the novel? Yeah, it was great. You know what happened? Like, Mark calls me up and he says, have you read Kingdom Come? I said, no, I heard about it. Okay, have you read it? Do you want to read it? I said, sure, I'll read it. I like your sensibility about that. He says, well, I want you to novelize it. I said, I'm not going to do that. If they give me the same deal they gave me on Miracle Monday when they didn't know any better, I'll do it, but that's not going to happen. So I read it. He sent me, I got the first two comics. They were out at the time. And then he sent me the pencils and I guess just the script for the fourth one. And I read it and it's wonderful. I think it's terrific. And I get to the end and he dedicated the damn thing to me. Me and Chris Reeve. And I called him up. I said, you put me in a hell of a bargaining position. Now I got to write it. So I did.
I thought it was great, man. I thought you did a hell of a job. So, man, I love the through line as far as writers. And, I know, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, that you kind of mentored Jeff Loeb in his early comic writing. You tell me. I don't
think I mentored.
All right, you tell me.
I've known him since he was about 12 or 13. His stepfather, who actually raised him, his biological father died when he was fairly young. But his stepfather was a friend of mine. He was a vice president of Brandeis, where I went to school.
Wow.
And and he married Jeff's mom. And I came over to dinner one day, and I didn't realize it, but it was because Dave, the dad, wanted me to meet Jeff, and we hit it off. I was like 18 and he was like 12. So now he's really old.
Nice.
And we made friends. And that was before I wrote after I wrote my Green Arrow story, but before I wrote the first Superman story. So I had this meeting with Julie lined up, and I was supposed to show up for this meeting with ideas for a Superman story. And we hashed those out. I just told him what I had in mind. And Jeff says, well, why don't you do a story called Why Must There Be a Superman? I didn't remember any of this stuff. For years, I didn't remember it. And he showed me this letter he had written me 20 years old earlier, 20 years later. And I didn't realize he had, I wrote the story. It was my story, but he came up with this vague idea that Superman was a social drag on the human race. And that was, I came in with 15 ideas for Julie on a yellow legal pad. And that was the one that turned him on. He called in people from the hallway and say, hey, tell them what you just told me. So I said, well, I wanted to do this story, And I was just nasal and young and stupid. And so I did the story. And 20 years later, Jeff said, yeah, I gave you the idea for that. What are you talking about? I said, oh, shit. What am I going to do? So I apologized all over the place, like to excess, for not recognizing him in it, which I should have done.
Nah. Well, I understand. I love the fact that all you guys, and forgive the generalization, but truly, you're products of your time, and you brought that relevance of what was happening socially to the comics. Again, this is my perception, but I do think that story, and then you look at what Denny and Neil did with their run on Green Lantern, Green Arrow, and stuff, and it's that really was this breath of fresh air. I mean, hey, I was a fan of the stuff that came before just as much, but it really was interesting, and clearly it is those books that in subsequent reprints of things, they reprint those stories and everything because I think they do stand out.
Well, they're reprinting a lot of stuff. Jeez. I just keep getting these statements saying, we reprinted these 3 stories you wrote. Here's $12.
Really, that's it. A cup of coffee, basically. Maybe
it's half
a sandwich.
But it's not much. But we had this gang of writers and artists in LA. We used to I don't know if we still do because we got this plague going on.
Yeah.
But we would get together once a month for dinner, and one time these 2 kids came who were doing who were writing and drawing for IDW and for DC, and I said, so what's DC's royalty rate like these days? And this one kid looks at the other kid, and they look at me, and one says, DC doesn't pay royalties. I said, well, what's that measly little statement I get every 6 months? And I go into this long story about how I got the first royalty deal with DC ever. I did. It was an NDA attached to it, but I told everybody. And and I'm going off on him. I said, I didn't do all this work for me. I did it for you. Why aren't you taking advantage of it? They went and sat at another table. They didn't want to hear it.
Jeez.
So, who knows?
Well, when I've talked to Howard in the past, I know his lawyer has kind of come to the aid of a lot of other, creators that, God, I can't think of his name. You'll forgive me. Probably it's probably got a team of lawyers.
Yeah, I got a lawyer too. We all got lawyers.
Well, but a guy that can obviously stand up and go, hey, wait a minute, you're using character X. My guy created that. I think he's owed a little money and stuff. And it seems like it's getting better. I've had this conversation with Jerry Ordway.
Yeah. And they let you do things unofficially. They let you get away with stuff. Shadow.
Absolutely.
Which they would never have let you do before. I mean, I saw a friend of mine selling reproductions of covers of stories that he wrote, and he would sign them and sell them at conventions. I go, well, that's a good idea. How'd you get the permission to do that? He says, don't tell anybody. Okay, I won't tell anybody. Everybody loves that Captain Thunder cover. I'm going to do that. Next time we can stick our heads out of the prairie dog hole.
I'm so glad you mentioned that story. That was very exciting, and that was prior to, for people who don't know, Captain Thunder was first of all the original name of Captain Marvel, but it was a great 70s story that you wrote that clearly was an homage to Captain Marvel. Had they already had the rights, and this was kind of a dress rehearsal? I mean, explain that.
No, they already had the rights, and I was already writing stories for it.
Oh, so Shazam was already out.
Shazam stories, yeah. And I did that one, and I did one for Shazam called The Incredible Cape Man, which was about a guy who walked onto a subway car with a Superman suit on and a C on his chest and says, I'm the great Cape Man. I fight crime and evil. He's a little bald guy, and everybody says, oh, never mind. And they sat down and continued their subway ride. So I did them both at the same time.
That's outstanding.
Jesus. But the cover for the Captain Thunder story was just amazing, and Nick Hardy drew it, and he's the only one that got credit for it. He based it on a Carmine layout, and it was an amazing layout. I mean, both chest emblems were facing the reader, and they were both flying at each other like face to face. And
dramatic. Yeah.
How do you get that? Carmine used to see things in his head and just put them down on paper like everybody else should, but he didn't. I don't think he realized how good he was. Yeah, he probably did. But he should have gotten credit for that cover too.
I used to love Kubert's Bronze Age covers, and it seemed like he was always doing so many covers for various books beyond the stuff he was doing for his war books and things like that. I always say, again, I used to tell Marty and Walt Simonson, for that matter, that first issue special that they did of Dr. Fate with the Kubert cover and everything. I mean, and that was a standard cover, but so many great covers and stuff. And so would Carmine like rough a cover and then just hand it to an artist?
Yeah, and it was really rough. It was like only an artist could understand the rough. I would look at these sketches he would do, and he'd have 65 lines where one line belonged. But I remember, me too.
I was going to say, yeah. Nick Cardy, absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, I remember, you remember the cover where Ra's al Ghul is standing over a prone Batman with no shirt on and a sword? And I was sitting next to Neil when he was drawing that cover in the coffee room.
I have a print of that hanging in my studio. Absolutely. Man.
Beautiful cover.
Absolutely. One of the best.
But Neil drew it, and he had this from Carmine's layout. Carmine's layout was very rough, and he had this sword. Ra's al Ghul was holding the sword in front of himself. And Neil drew it again, so it was off to the side. And I said, so that looks pretty good. And Neil said, yeah, my boss is going to tell me to redo it because it's not the way he did it. And Neil figured out a way to make it work based on Carmine's layout, which was conceptual. It was just totally conceptual, but he just didn't want the sword to get lost in the character's figure. So it came out pretty good. Yeah.
I'll tell you, back to Nick Cardy, so many of those iconic covers, and also just the ones that were more impressionistic as opposed to the straightforward ones a lot of times, just like would blow my mind. And that's literally when I'm scouring through back issue bins. Those are the kind of, or even when I go on eBay, those are the Nick Cardy covers that I'm looking for. Those are, Teen Titan and Aquaman ones, I think in particular, which is so beautiful. Yeah. Jeez. Yeah. Good stuff, man. Absolutely. Yeah. There you go. John Pike. Nobody could draw slow motion like Carmine's classic flashes. I agree with that as well. Absolutely. So
he made it up. He figured out how to do that. I don't think anybody had ever done that before.
Let's see here. Oh, the Joker versus the JLA.
Joker versus JLA. And he was talking about the Green Lantern assigned to protect Krypton. That was Toma Ray.
Yes.
And there's one where I gave credit to the person who came up with the germ of the idea. That was Neil's. Neil says, how come the Green Lanterns didn't save Krypton? There must have been a Green Lantern for Krypton. And I said, oh, that's an idea. So I put, thanks to Neil, because I had more time in my life at that time. I should have done that for Jeff. I still should have done that for Jeff.
I'm still bummed they killed off Toma Ray. I always loved that design of that chicken alien sort of head. And great note. Like he was like Beta Ray Bill before.
He was a fish.
What was it?
I don't know what he was a fish in the movie, wasn't he? He was like a land fish or something.
God, I got to rewatch the Ryan Reynolds movie. I'm not sure, but I love Toma Ray.
I liked it. I'm the only one.
Did you really?
I'm the only one who liked it.
I always feel like I'm in the minority when it comes to liking Snyder's Watchmen movie. I don't love it, but I liked it.
I like that. I like the fact that he put Leonard Cohen in. Anything with Leonard Cohen in it is going to win, as far as I'm concerned.
I was going to say Toma Ray, he was like the Beta Ray Bill before Beta Ray Bill, frankly. No offense to Walt for creating such a great Thor character and stuff. But, in terms of a noble Green Lantern alien and stuff and was, he was one of Hal's like closest allies in the Corps.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
By default.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elliot was the coolest guy in the DC bullpen back in the 70s. Those shades, the scowl.
You like that picture.
Well, everybody wanted to be Superman. I wanted to be Elliot, drawn by Kurt Schaffenberger.
Yeah. I wanted to be Kurt Schaffenberger. Kurt Schaffenberger looked like Clark Kent with a mustache. I used to tell him that.
That's hilarious. And I think I've seen self-portraits and stuff of Kurt's and stuff. I loved Mr. and Mrs. Superman and the Superman family dollar books and stuff. Hey, tell me about Jeanette Kahn. because that was a real bold move. Uh-oh.
What?
And no, I'm just saying, that was I just saw your face. Uh-oh.
I don't know. What do you want me to tell you about her?
No, honestly, I just think she was like, I'll tell you, I used to read Dynamite as a kid before,
Did you really?
her, absolutely.
You're the one.
Yeah. Oh, that was a great Scholastic book. I was the only one in my school, man. A lot of us are reading that magazine that she made.
Okay.
So,
Well, that's how she got the job, because she did that. She didn't know anything about comics, but she got the job because she knew about magazines and knew about kids.
Decent boss, cool boss. I mean, or let people do their thing and stay out of the way. Whatever. Tell me.
Yeah, usually, mostly.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. She was okay. She was there for a long time.
Yeah.
What do you want me to tell you?
I don't know. I don't know any work experiences, whatever.
Well, when she first got the job, we did this convention, a DC Comics convention in New York.
The SuperCon, I believe, correct?
SuperCon, yeah.
Go on.
And somebody showed up. I can't remember his name. He showed up at the costume parade, dressed up as me, which I thought was pretty cool. And somebody said, "Well, you're much better looking than he is," and I was. It didn't matter. He was wearing, work boots and a flannel shirt, and he was walking around goofy with his shoulders moving when he took every step. And oh yeah, that's me. I could see. And I was sitting next to Jeanette. And I said, "Well, I hear you got this plum job." She said, "Yeah." I said, "How'd you do that?" She said, "I don't know." So we went to a ball game. We had a nice time. The two of us, we went to a Yankee game. And that was about the last contact I had with her for the next 15 years.
Okay.
Yeah, I really didn't hang with her much.
All right, fair enough. KOY, what was your favorite Marvel work? Spectacular Spider-Man?
No, Doctor Strange.
Awesome.
My favorite was always Doctor Strange. I liked Kull the Conqueror. I thought that was cool. I wanted to do one. Roy wouldn't let me. He liked it too. But I love Doctor Strange, and I never got to do any. Whenever I had a fight with Julie, I would call up somebody at Marvel, and they'd give me work. So I did maybe 5 or 6 stories for Marvel in the course of 20 years. But
wow.
The first time I called up Stan, and I said, "I want to make an appointment to see you in your office." And he said, "Okay," like a grown-up. We were grown-ups then. And I showed up and I said, "I had a big fight with Julie. I don't know what to do. I need 4 books a month." And he said, "Okay, you can have 1." And he drags me downstairs and says to, I guess it was Shooter or Lan or whoever was in charge then. He says, "Give this guy a Spider-Man book." And they say, "Okay." So I did a Spider-Man book. And then I made up with Julie and I disappeared. I never did, I never explained why, but they knew. And that happened like 4 or 5 times because I used to fight with Julie all the time. We're these Jewish street kids from the outer boroughs,
Was it was it okay to work for both companies, or was it like,
Yeah, but I didn't. No, it was okay because we were freelancers. They wanted to keep that status on us. So nobody really had, at that time, nobody had a contract. I did Superman for 15 years, month to month, pretty much.
Yeah.
And there was never a guarantee from one book to the next. And that was fine with me because I was, in my 20s and I was an idiot. What did I know?
Did you, when you wrote him and stuff, he was at GBS, right? Was he at the Planet as well, or how did it work?
He was at GBS, but I liked Perry, so I kept having him show up at the Planet. I like Perry as a character. So yeah. I didn't like GBS much, but I liked Morgan Edge.
Sure.
And I liked Steve Lombard.
Absolutely.
The Carrie character, but every story I wrote after Carrie created Steve Lombard, I would do a Lombard bit. Some dopey thing that Clark would do to Lombard, because I wanted Clark to have things he could do that Superman can't do. Like Superman can't goof on people. He can't make faces. He can't, say you're an idiot to anybody. But Clark could do that. So I used to have him do that a lot.
Did you ever write any of those great backups like Private Life of Clark Kent? Or
I did a lot of those.
I love those stories, man. I really did. Those and also when they rebooted Superman for the New 52 and they de-aged him. And I'm like, they already did this in the 70s, and it was called Superman the In-Between Years, where he was a little, he was in Metropolis University, so he was a little too old to be Superboy, but wasn't quite Superman yet. And I thought those stories were a lot of fun. I really enjoyed those as well. Yeah. And the future Superman of like 2046 or whatever it was.
Right. Yeah. I did that issue 400 of Superman where I talked about the future, but I didn't have Superman in any of the stories. And I called up Steranko and I asked him to do the art on a story. He says, well, I consider myself primarily a writer. And I said, okay. So what do you want to do? You want to write it? And he said, yeah. I said, terrific. So he wrote this story, which was in the back of the book. It was terrific. It was beautiful.
Yes.
And it was very lyrical. And God bless him, he calls me up in New Hampshire and reads me his script just to make sure I think it's okay. So he was a good guy. Still is. So he was the only one who got to write. I only got one credit on the whole book. So it was never clear who wrote anything except the introduction that Joe Orlando drew and the last story that Steranko wrote. It was the only work he ever did for DC.
Wow.
Terrific. It was just wonderful stuff.
Now, man, all right, that inspires two questions. One, tell me about Joe Orlando, because I mean, there's a guy that goes back to EC and stuff like that. And,
he was always very respectful of people. He went to everybody's funeral. He was concerned that somebody got buried in Potter's Field, some old artist, and I should remember who it was, but I don't. And he got to work on some kind of deal through ACPA, the Academy of Comic Book Arts, which was excellent then. Just to make sure nobody got buried in Potter's Field anymore, because he used to go to every funeral.
Wow.
It was very traditional kind of guy. And he was good. He was a good guy.
That's cool. And also, you mentioned Superman 400. How about Superman 300, the great modernization of
Superman 2001?
Yes, yes.
And again, 2001 was the distant future.
Yeah, back in the 70s. Again, I remember buying it from the spinner rack and being blown away. And that great moment when the rocket ship lands in the ocean in international waters. And literally there are divers from the Soviet Union and the United States swimming towards the rocket.
Which is more likely,
What's that?
Which is more likely than what happened. Well, I guess in the 30s, it's rational for a spaceship to land on Earth and nobody notices.
Well, or in a farm, very, very War of the Worlds kind of, thing.
Yeah.
Very Orwellian. Yeah. Or Orson Welles, excuse me.
Orson Welles. Wellian, just Wellian. Wellesian, yeah.
So, that was a great story, though. And that's why he's, wasn't the American diver, I think, was named Clark, I believe.
Garrett Kent, I think his name.
Oh, he was Kent. Okay.
Well, one of them was Clark. The general who raised him one of them was Clark and one of them was Kent.
Yeah.
The diver and the general.
That's excellent, man.
Can't remember which one. I probably should read it again.
I understand.
All the comic shops are closed. I couldn't even find it if I wanted to.
I know. Jesus, this is true. God, I haven't. That'd be a fun comic to look up on eBay or whatever, and then snag a copy or whatever. That's there you go. There's the digital back bin that we can all resort to as eBay, of course. Yeah. So, geez. Let's see. Elliot also wrote an awesome story from the Joker series. Luther, you're driving me sane. I remember that story.
Yeah. Yeah, Julie wanted us to team up somebody with the Joker in every story. It was basically a DC team up book. And the two premises, well, three. The Joker had to lose at the end, and he had to team up with somebody who was generally the antagonist. And the third thing was Batman had to appear in like a Stan Lee kind of cameo somewhere in the story. So we always did, but nobody ever referred to him. You know, I keep telling people I'm responsible for Stan's cameos. I am. Never mind. Maybe next time we'll tell you that story.
Okay. And yeah, I don't want to, really, I don't want to be a pig with your time and stuff like that, but a couple other questions. Do you own any original art from the stories you wrote? Did writers get a cut of the art at all?
No. But I ended up, people would give me some once in a while. I'm looking at one now. I don't want to even tell you what it is because I lock my house because of it.
All right. Hey, George Nelson, and I believe, is this the Clark Kent Forever Superman Never story? The Mr. Xavier 4-parter with Carey?
Yeah.
Oh man, dude.
That was the one that led up to number 300.
Okay, and yeah, as George points out, the infamous Lois scene. Yeah, we're really finally, because Superman thinks he's losing his powers,
right?
As Clark Kent kind of finally asserts himself, really gets into Steve Lombard's face and gets assertive into like, "Hey, Lois, we're going out," you know.
Yeah, I like that. They had this newsmaker section in Newsweek and this people section in Time, and they would always list some interesting things somebody did, and they would have these boldface names of whoever it was who did whatever they did, and that week they put out a little paragraph about Superman, Clark, and Lois, with Superman, Clark, and Lois in boldface, and my name wasn't there. Neither was Carrie's. We did it. They didn't do it, but they don't want to know. They didn't want to know. So,
but it was.
I mean, I stopped subscribing to Newsweek just because of that.
But it was again. It was an adult story in terms of that if like finally, I mean, not in any salacious way, but it really was like
it was Arrested Development story. I mean,
all right.
I mean, what are they going to do? I mean, I don't know. That's the way people are. I tried to make these guys the way people are.
Absolutely. Well, that's honestly, man. I think there are times that more so, I guess, the goofiness of the Weisinger era rather than Julie's era of editorial. But I always am like, the Bronze Age Superman, man, those were great stories, and they really were. There was a little more teeth in them than just what came before, and it just a little more relevant. And like you said, you humanized the cast.
It's just for what was on my mind. I don't know. I think probably Gardner Fox was probably too old at some point to have related to people the way we did then. I don't know. I always used to tell Denny that Superman was a much more realistic character than Batman. Because he reacted to people on a human level. I mean, which is not to say it's likely that some superpowered Kryptonian would show up on Earth, but it's even less likely that a gazillionaire playboy would pretend to be some dissolute guy and then go out at night and beat guys up. That's less likely than there being a Superman.
I understand.
There's a giant puddle about 12.5 billion light years from here. Now do the math. The universe is probably 13.9 billion years old. This puddle is 12.5 billion light years from here. So what we're seeing, it doesn't even have a name. I call it the big giant space puddle, but it has some astronomical designation with a plus sign in it and an A and a couple of numbers. But it's the size, it's actual water. At the center of it, it's basically a galaxy, but no stars. At the center of it is this black hole. And this black hole, what it's doing for a living is slamming together hydrogen and oxygen atoms, making water.
Yeah.
It's got so much water there that it could fill 140 trillion times the oceans of the Earth. Okay, this is a real thing.
I'm with you.
And I'm thinking, and this was discovered in 2011 or so. And I'm thinking, you've got essentially an infinite amount of coherent matter and an infinite amount of time. Anything could happen in that context. And it's what put the perspective of the universe into shape for me. So that was 12.5 billion years ago. Who knows what's going on there now? This is what keeps me up at night. What's going on there now? Not there specifically, but anywhere. That thing is more profoundly alive than we are. It's alive. It's reproducing. It's making more molecules. And who knows what hijinks it's been up to since then. It's 6 times the size of what it was 12.5 billion years ago, if it's been doing the same thing all along. And when a molecule meets a molecule in deep space, it exerts a certain amount of gravity on itself, on each other. And who knows what it could be doing. Certainly it's conscious in some sense. Certainly if it's conscious, it's aware of other unitary creatures like itself. It's maybe aware of us. There is no concept of God that humans can conceive of that is more omnipotent than this big giant space puddle. All right?
Sure.
So there could be brains floating around inside there shooting laser beams at each other. Who knows what could be happening there? But if that sort of thing is possible, then certainly in some sense, Superman's possible.
Interesting.
But I don't think Batman's possible. I used to explain this to Denny, and he would roll his eyes and say, "No, you can't."
That's outstanding. I love
he
your
hated Superman. He just didn't want to do Superman, which is why I did.
You know, honestly, that opinion, and also I loved talking to him about Robin and how he hated Robin.
Yeah, I hate Robin.
Do you really?
Yeah, it's like Wesley Crusher. Who needs that?
That's hilarious. That's fantastic. Robin is the Wesley Crusher of DC. I think that is very, very funny. Jesus. And right now you're upset. You know, we did. Denny was at a panel at Terrificon, a Connecticut show, and it was Denny and Mike Barr and younger writers Pete Tomasi and Tim Seeley, and it was purely a Robin panel. And Denny is just ranting about how much, come on, this kid with a target, he's got a red vest. He's in the alley.
He's the bait.
Literally.
Yeah.
And Tim Seeley, one of the younger writers, is like, there's probably a 7-year-old kid in the audience right now in a Robin suit, but I like Robin. And it cracked me up. Seriously, it was the best hour of a panel I had ever moderated. It was fantastic. Because it really was just these guys just, I hate Robin.
Yeah.
So, hey, I was going to say, as you were explaining your universal theory, and it's great. I loved your editorial years ago when you compared Al Gore to Jor-El. Kind of.
Oh, you read that?
Absolutely, I did. Oh, yeah.
I hardly heard from anybody on that.
You're kidding, man. We talked about that on a previous interview. We did, and that's okay. Please, I don't.
It was an op-ed for the LA Times, maybe about 10 years ago.
Yeah. around the time of Inconvenient Truth. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And and again, good Lord, hell, if global warming is the only thing that we had to worry about right now in today's society, good Lord, Jesus,
sakes,
yikes. All right, on to happier things. Jeff Pennington, what's that, man?
It's getting really weird. I'm telling you.
Yeah, it is. Jesus, I know, and it's getting stranger and sadder. So yeah, Jeff Pennington, big thank you to Mr. Maggin for kindly responding to an email full of my art 18 years ago. Very cool.
I don't remember the art, but I remember your name. So hello.
Would be a professional artist today without his kind response, spurring me on to continue. That's awesome.
Really? Wow.
Absolutely.
Good for you.
And Jesse wants to know, can you talk a little bit about your Wonder Woman run and what it was like writing Diana in the 70s and 80s?
The best thing that happened to me when I was writing Wonder Woman, there was this one story I wrote where at some point, I really did research on Wonder Woman. I looked up what Marston was about and learned a lot about him. Didn't learn as much about him as I should have, because I read Jill Lepore's book a couple of years ago, and that was just wonderful.
Yeah.
If there's anybody out there who hasn't read The Secret History of Wonder Woman by Jill Lepore, she's a historian at Harvard. She's a brilliant, brilliant writer. She writes like an angel. She'll do things like she'll make it was very academic. She footnoted everything, and she'll put in a sentence and footnote it, and you'll look at the footnote and it says, "and a good thing too."
Editorializing your footnotes. That's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, she's just so comfortable with her subject matter. She wrote a book called These Truths, which is a 600-page history of the United States. Came out about a year ago. And I was really thinking about going back and teaching American history again, just so I could use that as a textbook.
Oh, wow.
My daughter teaches 5th grade now. And she was complaining to me the other day about how they never taught her American history for real. She said, the Puritans came over here so they could have slaves. They wouldn't let them have slaves in England. I said, well, that's kind of true.
Yeah.
She never made these connections until she had to teach it. So now she's teaching 5th graders. She's got such a diverse class. She's got maybe 2 middle-class white kids in the class of 30 kids.
Wow.
And she's got kids from Israel, from Africa, she teaches in a school. This is where she went to school. The school's got 400 kids in 20 languages, 20 separate first languages for 400 kids. So you do the math. How many kids, the main first language in the school is Farsi, then comes English.
Interesting.
And then Spanish, then Russian, then Hebrew.
Okay.
And French. And I don't know, after that, Tagalog, I don't know what, maybe there's 2 kids who speak Tagalog and they hang out together. What was I saying? I just diverted.
Back to your Wonder Woman run, and you said reading Jill's book that you wish you'd known even more.
Yeah. I wrote this story, and I wanted to make a point about Wonder Woman's attitude toward life. And at some point, I wrote, in the last panel, I wrote, don't ever mistake your foul play, your ill doings with the sacred name of love. Somebody said he was doing something because he loved somebody, and she just flipped out and gave him, a good talking to, which is, what Wonder Woman does. And I got this letter. This is the best fan letter I ever got. It was this is maybe 74, 75. I'd been writing comics for years, a couple of years. And a letter from this woman who identified herself as a lesbian and said, it's not possible that this story was written by a man. Elliot Maggin is clearly the pseudonym of some woman who knows what she's talking about. So I just was so impressed with that letter, I kept it.
Wow, that's amazing.
I don't know where it's in this gray desk drawer I used to have, and I think it burned down with the house my ex-wife used to live in New Hampshire. But whatever, it was a great letter. That's my experience with Wonder Woman. I'm impressed with myself for having written a Wonder Woman that impressed gay women.
That's cool. Yeah, that's awesome, man. Any DC comic bad guys you always wanted to write, Marvel baddies as well, that you didn't get a chance to?
No, my favorite bad guy was always Luthor.
There you go, man. And again,
that's my favorite bad guy. I can do anything with him. I identify with him. I can be smart. Like, I can be really, really smart, like 3 hours a day. You know, if I'm really cranking, I can be Lex for 3 hours a day. And that's fine. That's enough. Because if you're Lex for more than 3 hours a day, you turn evil somehow. Can't handle it.
George Nelson wants to know if you read Larry Tye's Superman history or any thoughts on that or other books about Superman.
Gee, yeah. Larry did a great book. And what was cool about it was the cover, so he didn't have the Superman emblem on it. This cover was just an arm with a blue sleeve. And it was immediately identifiable. And if you look at it, you know it's Superman. And you forget when you look away that it didn't have the Superman logo on it. I think that was cool. He's a good guy. He came out here to plug it. He went to a synagogue near where I live.
Okay.
And he talked about how Superman is essentially Jewish.
Sure.
Which he got from me.
Really?
He did. I don't know if he knew I was in the audience until afterward, but he did that. He said that.
Well, it's the Moses story, certainly, and I'm sure I've heard you say that, and it's been quoted before, and I can appreciate that, absolutely, and of course, being created by two Jewish kids from Cleveland.
Yeah, and that was the point. I mean, it was their immigrant story. They were the sons of Russian immigrants, same as my parents.
Did you ever meet Siegel and Shuster?
I did.
What was that like?
They were so genteel, they were kind of timid when I first met them, both of them. But they were, like, Jerry was so bright. He was funny. I can't even give you examples now because it was so long ago. But I made friends with his daughter.
Nice.
Laura. Made friends with his wife, I guess. I wrote an article about them for the Village Voice.
Oh, awesome!
I did at the time when they were trying to get their pension, which they got.
Yeah, rightfully so, obviously.
Yeah,
and just go ahead.
No, I mean, somebody up at the office said something about Joe being a son of a bitch or something. And I said, well, are you seriously talking about the same guy? And he said, yeah, I won't tell you who it was.
Okay.
But there was just so much poison in the air about them at that time.
Wow.
I mean, I wrote this story called The Man Who Created Superman. This is before I met them. It was a character living on a desert island who's telling Superman stories to animals because he didn't have anybody else to talk to.
Absolutely.
And it turns out everything in his stories was a real thing. He was somehow channeling Superman. And I named him Joey Jerome. And at the end of the story, I wrote, and this is dedicated to Superman's creators, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. And they made me take it out. They weren't allowed to publish the names of Superman's creators.
Jesus.
They weren't allowed to refer to them as Superman's creators. It was part of some deal they made with a lawyer. They certainly didn't make the deal with Jerry or Joe. But that's really where I first became aware of them, maybe a year or two before I met them. And before they got up on their hind legs finally when DC sold the rights to do the Superman movie, the first one. They made $3 million on just the rights. And the article I wrote about them, and Jerry wrote this 9-page letter to everybody against his lawyer's advice, which is occasionally the way to do things. And that's when everybody became aware of their situation. And I wrote this article in The Voice. And the conclusion of the article was they had just secured their pension. DC made twice as much money this year on Superman on just the rights to the movie as they will pay Jerry and Joe collectively if they both live to be 100, which was true.
Yeah.
So they got to have a decent old age. That was
those terrible stories of Jerry being a messenger and Joe being legally blind and living above his nephew.
It was Joe who was the messenger.
Oh, excuse me.
Was the messenger in the building.
Wow.
Where Donenfeld was publishing the comic book, and he brought a message to a paper, to an envelope to Donenfeld one day, and Donenfeld said, "No, you're not allowed to be doing this. Not in this building. It's undignified," and wouldn't offer him anything. Wouldn't do anything for him. Would just preclude him from being this guy.
Jesus. Yeah. Ish.
Yeah, isn't that gross?
Yeah, it's the worst. Absolutely, man. My God. Absolutely. So. No, they deserve every, Christ, tens of thousands more than what they got at the end and stuff, and then I would say the same for their heirs and their estates and everything. No. And also just the sadness too, that Jerry had to come back in the 50s and write during the Silver Age, some of those amazing Superman stories, like when Superman went back in time and was on Krypton and knew his parents before they got married, and Lila Laurel. Yeah. Great stuff, man. Yeah,
I think he did Superman Red and Superman Blue. That's that trilogy.
Yeah.
When they started paying royalties for reprints, I was an editor. I was an editor for like 10 minutes, but it was that 10-minute period that they started paying royalties for reprints. And somebody came in my office and said, I got no idea who wrote this Superman story we're reprinting. I said, well, if you don't know who wrote it, if there's no record of who wrote it, nobody's claiming it, you send the money to Jerry and Joe. And that became the policy.
That's great.
I don't know if it's fair, but it was certainly.
Yeah, like you said, if it's an orphan story and nobody, I would say, definitely give it to them. And then, of course, the other side of the coin, any encounters with Bob Kane?
No. Let's leave it at that.
Fair enough. That's awesome. Absolutely, man. That's amazing. Didn't Siegel write the Death of Superman imaginary story?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
1961.
That gleeful look on Luthor's face when he finally did it. He's got his hands up in there. I finally did it. And it's like, wow, I did it.
And then you guys have to watch. You guys over there, you watch.
Yes, the kryptonite ray hitting him.
Plate glass window just so you could see.
And also that Ghost of Superman, like addressing Supergirl and stuff at the end. Those imaginary stories, man. They were so great. They were so much fun, and I'm sure freeing for the creators and stuff to be able to have fun and then tell these crazy stories.
Yeah, there's too much to read now. I think nobody who's doing it now read half the stuff that's out there. I mean, I had to do research. I would love to sit in the archive room. There's this library with all the stuff that DC had ever published. I got to hold Superman #1 in my hands. Nobody cared.
There's a great, I think it was Canadian made, half-hour documentary about DC and Marvel from the late 70s. And it opens with Mike Gold going into the New York archive and pulling out the first issue of Detective with the Fu Manchu cover and everything. And and I've talked to Mike about this as well. It was made in like 78, I believe. And they even, and it was funny because it really was this weird orphaned, I don't know if it was an episode of a Canadian television show, but I know a New York film distributor was releasing it to schools, and a buddy of mine purchased it from a school library that was just, dumping old material, and it was on 16 millimeter film. And I imagine it was shown to schools of, hey, kids, if you have any, aptitude towards art, here's something you could do. This is people who work and make their living doing that. But Julie, Denny, and Neil recreated a story session for Superman versus Muhammad Ali, and Jack Harris was in there, and Trevor Von Eden, and they were going over the first splash page of Black Lightning, and even the old DC, the old 800 number or 900 number. I can't remember what it was, but you used to be able to call. Which I called to my parents' chagrin. Do you know how much this is costing us? Are you nuts?
No, it didn't cost anything. Oh, if it was a 900 number, it cost you money, but if it was an 800, it shouldn't.
Well, it was like, I think it was a toll call, like where it was like 50 cents or something every time you called. But oh my God. And it,
used to be free to call information too, though.
This is true. But it's amazing. And honestly, it was great going with this, a copy of the film on my phone and showing it to people like 12 years ago going, okay, like who's that that's drawing? Whatever. Stan and Archie Goodwin sitting down with the Human Fly, a Marvel character, and them discussing, the designs and stuff like that. Oh, it's just fantastic, really interesting. And Jonathan Winters was the narrator of it, which was really weird.
Really?
Yes. Oh, Al, I'll send you. I'll make sure you text me your email, and I've got it in a private box because it's not my movie to share. Like I always feel like I don't want to put it up on YouTube, although some jerk did put it up on YouTube and put a time code on it, and it's like, you jerk! I know you don't own this movie. Back out, because I really would love to find out. For years, I showed it at a couple conventions, saying, I don't know who made this. This is amazing. Anybody who knows, let's try and figure this out, and no one can figure it out. But it was definitely a Canadian production. That's as far as we got.
Jeez.
Yeah, crazy stuff. But yeah, it's like, seriously. I mean, I showed it to Simonson. I showed it to Neil, a few others, and everything. And and Walt was great. Well, that's Jack Harris, and Trevor Von Eden. I showed it to him and everything. So, yeah. Weird little time capsule.
Geez, all the people. You asked me earlier who I used to hang out with. I left so many people out.
That's all right, man. Well,
I mean, I don't know. So we had this apartment. I found it, and Milgram moved in with me, and then I moved out, and I guess Walter moved in, and at some point Howard lived across the hall, and it was so incestuous. It was bizarre.
There's a great documentary that came out a couple of years ago about Jeffrey Jones, Jeffrey Catherine Jones, of course, before she passed away. And there were just these incredible photographs of after-hour parties of everybody when you guys were all babies and stuff. And God, seriously, it's so great to see. And I always embarrass Weezy Simonson and say, Jesus, I'm like, you're Marsha Brady, for God's sake. And also,
and she didn't know it.
What's
I
that?
don't know how she could manage not to know it, because I was like gaga every time she'd walk in, and I'd leave. It was ridiculous.
Well, that's Len said the same thing. I watched one of Mark Evanier's panels at San Diego, and Len's like, oh my God, we were all in love with Weezy. Oh my, we all had massive crushes on Weezy, and especially being an editor. What's that?
No clue. She had no clue.
That's awesome. Well, that's great. I mean, and again, that's why she's cool and everything. But when she was an editor too at Warren, and did you ever write any Warren stuff?
No, I didn't. What is he doing now? I heard he's
Jim Warren.
Yeah,
I don't know. I thought he passed away, but maybe
or something.
I thought he passed away, but I could be wrong. I don't know. I don't know. Bill Shelley wrote an incredible biography of him that Fantagraphics put out a year before Bill passed away. And I'm talking about Bill Shelley.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Oh my God. And I love too his Harvey Kurtzman book and his Otto Binder book as well. And oh God, it was so good and really fascinating and just a great thing. And it's out of print, and it's such a shame. And I hope Fantagraphics will consider putting it back in print or whatever. And I was all set to talk to Bill about it and everything. And unfortunately he had passed away last summer and bummed me out. But yeah, I mean, it's such an amazing history of Warren Publications and everything that he made, not just Creepy and Eerie and those other great magazines and stuff. So yeah, pretty wild, man. Oh, here, what was it like to write Superman around the time of the movie, especially after it did really well with critics and fans?
It was great. I mean, it was like I had the coolest job on earth. I told you,
Yeah.
I saw the movie with my friend Pam, and we went across the street, and I ordered milk at the bar. I couldn't handle it.
Did you ever see Chris Reeve after the movie?
Once, yeah. Yeah, he signed a copy of Last Son of Krypton that I had from a hardcover copy that I got from Literary Guild. But that's the only time I met him.
Okay, and of course
He was
he's on
nice enough, I guess. On the cover.
He was on the original cover, absolutely, and stuff. Yeah. But now people can get that in Miracle Monday, and and again, forgive me, your third, your non-superhero book again, once again.
Not My Closet.
Not My Closet, absolutely. Elliot S. Maggin, very cool, and yes, available at all online booksellers. And
I did a book called An Enemy's Gift, which is a bunch of short stories. I just pulled them together, and they were thick enough for a book. So I did a book on them. That's another one too.
And your podcast again, where you're going back and you're reading this stuff.
Elliot makes stuff up.
Elliot makes stuff up. That's fantastic, man. I am glad you're podcasting. I think that's awesome. And seriously, Al, anytime I'm gonna probably put out the bat signal again. In sooner than later, and have you back on. But I love what we've been talking about. As let's see, any other. Oh, there you go. And your novels were great. We'll check out
my novels are great. I didn't know that. Thank you.
What's here? Let's see what. Let's hear first. How do you feel about the way Bendis referenced Miracle Monday?
Did he?
I didn't know that either.
I didn't know he did.
Basically about Superman beating the devil. Bendis made it about Superman reveal. Oh, well, yeah, I guess, he did reveal his identity. That's true. And I didn't really make the connection to Miracle Monday.
Yeah.
You're not, that's so.
I think if Superman reveals his identity, then Clark Kent no longer exists. That's what I did in Miracle Monday. At some point, somebody asked Jimmy, well, Jimmy says, I wish Clark could just show up so we could hang out with him. And somebody asked him, well, what would you do? And he'd think it was really weird,
Okay.
So, yeah. Identity.
The Major's great granddaughter, Nikki Wheeler Nicholson, is joining us. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever met Nikki.
No.
Oh, Nikki's awesome. She wrote an incredible.
Hello, Nikki.
She wrote an incredible biography of the Major, the founder of.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, it's great. It's really great. In fact, Nikki, I'm glad you're watching because I got to get you on, and we'll talk about your fantastic book. And she even reprinted a lot of those really early Nicholson stories that are pre-Superman, like the early days of National, I suppose. I guess it was National Comics back then. Whenever. Like, because, like we all know, well, like we all know more Fun Comics, and obviously these were even in Fun Comics, which preceded more Fun Comics. I didn't know. I didn't know that either.
I didn't know that either.
Great stuff, man.
I wrote a master's thesis on it years ago.
On the Major?
I got all the names. Yeah. On Superman and Green Lantern,
Okay.
Yeah.
Unbelievable stuff, man. No.
I got an Ivy League degree out of it, so I guess it must have been okay. You kind of have to go to college to realize how nonsensical it is.
This
Love
is
your
great.
Stories. You run with my Superman, and I read the Arabic. Really?
That's pretty cool. Isn't that awesome?
Milton Snappin was a guy. He used to come in lunchtime and play bridge with Julie, and he would put out all those foreign language editions. But the Arabic version had the S reversed because all he did was flip the artwork so it could read from right to left.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
So
of course.
The wrong Superman emblem on it. But
that's amazing.
Okay. It still worked. It was just a symbol. So.
Sure. Absolutely. No, if anything, it's more alien if it's reversed. Yeah. So that's really cool. And that makes a lot of sense. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
To flip the art so it can read properly in the other languages. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Who knew? Okay. That's awesome. All right, Al, I'm I'm gonna let you go because you've been very kind with your time, and I'm sure I'm cutting into your dinner time right now. So
I'm hungry, and I want another glass of bourbon. Very sad.
Great hangout, El. I really appreciate it, and and you're doing okay. I mean, this is like I said. We said weird times and stuff like that.
It's very weird times. My son came over with my grandson the other day, and I had to sit outside on the lawn and wave at him. It was very bizarre.
Yeah, man, that's heartbreaking. And
he's exposed every day. He's a doctor,
Oh wow, yeah.
He's very worried about it.
Sure,
I'm very worried about it because he knows more than I do.
Yeah.
So I know he's worried. I figured there must be something to worry about.
No, I understand, man. My friends in the medical profession, and to my friends that are grandparents and stuff. No, my heart goes out to them where it really is tough, and you gotta social distance and everything. So that sucks. So thank God for technology. I hope you're having video conversations with
a lot of video.
Good,
a lot of video with old friends.
That's awesome, man. Dude, seriously, this was great. I appreciate it. I'll send you a link to the audio. I'm going to release the audio tomorrow, so right. I'll message you. And I'll ask for your email, and I'll send you that weird Canadian movie too.
I didn't realize you don't have it. I was looking at my email for this link, but I found it anyway. So.
Oh, and well, I'm glad. Well, then we'd been contacting each other through messaging and stuff, so I'm glad you did that. But great seeing you, El. Great conversation. Be well, and thanks for hanging out tonight.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Elliot S. Maggin, everybody. Fantastic conversation. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. It certainly seemed like it, but given the response we got on our questions, I thought really good questions. So thanks for watching Word Balloon. On late night into the weekend, Greg Rucka has written the screenplay for an adaptation of his comic book, The Old Guard, and it's premiering on Netflix late night, or I guess early Friday morning. So really Friday, I'll release the conversation that Greg and I had about the movie, but we obviously recommend you see the movie first and then watch our conversation or listen to it as a podcast. So check that out. I hope you'll join us for that and more great stuff from Word Balloon next week. We've got a great lineup set up. Definitely Axel Alonso will be joining us on Tuesday and other wonderful people as well. I just want to confirm before I promote those other people. But thanks a lot again.